What happened, Slocum? It's a setup! Don't!
There was a time when 3 silhouettes, a ringing speakerphone, and 4 simple words could bring millions of Americans to attention. Good morning, angels. For 1 hour each week, Sabrina Duncan, Jill Monroe, and Kelly Garrett entered worlds where almost everyone underestimated them. They posed as beauty contestants, race car drivers, cocktail waitresses, prisoners, and wealthy socialites. Then they caught the criminals who never saw them coming. Critics dismissed the series as Jiggle television. Audiences made it one of the biggest shows in America. At its peak, the series shaped hairstyles, magazine covers, toys, and the weekly routines of families who knew exactly when that speakerphone would ring. But behind the sunshine, glamour, and perfectly feathered hair was a production that repeatedly had to reinvent itself. The show began with a title nobody liked. Charlie's famous voice arrived as a last-minute rescue. Farrah Fawcett became a phenomenon so large that she left after 1 season. Cheryl Ladd accepted the impossible task of following her. And Kate Jackson lost the chance to take a role that would later win an Academy Award for the actress who played it. These are 15 stories behind the series that looked effortless on television, even when almost nothing behind the camera was simple. Number 15. It almost became the Alley Cats. Before there were angels, there were cats. The project that became Charlie's Angels was first developed under the title The Alley Cats. Kate Jackson was involved early, after working with producers Aaron Spelling and Leonard Goldberg on The Rookies. Writers Ivan Goff and Ben Roberts had the basic detective premise, but the identity surrounding it was still unsettled. Jackson disliked the proposed name. As she later recalled, it sounded too cartoonish for the kind of adventure series she believed they were making. During a meeting in Aaron Spelling's office, she noticed artwork showing 3 angels. That image suggested a cleaner identity for the women at the center of the show. They could be angels. For a time, the proposed title became Harry's Angels. The unseen employer was going to be named Harry, giving the 3 investigators a shared nickname and the series a simple organizing idea. There was one practical problem. ABC already had a detective series called Harry O. To prevent confusion, Harry became Charlie. The change did more than solve a title conflict. Angels gave the group a memorable identity without erasing their individual personalities. Charlie gave the unseen boss a friendly, slightly mysterious presence. Together, the words sounded like a show viewers could remember after hearing the title once. Jackson was never formally credited or paid for the name she helped create. Yet her objection to the Alley Cats helped give the series one of the most durable titles in television history. Number 14. Charlie's famous voice was a last-minute rescue.
Sure good to hear your voice.
Oh, Charlie, I'm glad to hear your voice.
Charlie Townsend was the most powerful man in the series, even though viewers were never allowed to see his face. That decision placed enormous pressure on the voice. An earlier recording had already been made, but Aaron Spelling believed it lacked the authority the character needed. Late on a Friday night, he called John Forsythe and asked him to come to the studio.
And the phone rang.
You're doing one of those scenes with Linda,
The phone
right?
rang at 12:30 or 1 o'clock in the morning. And I said, who the devil can that be?
Forsythe later remembered leaving home with an overcoat pulled over his pajamas. He arrived at 20th Century Fox, stood before a microphone, and read the dialogue that would introduce Charlie to the world. The result immediately changed the character. Forsythe's voice was polished but not cold. He sounded confident enough to command the room, amused enough to belong in the fantasy, and distant enough to preserve the mystery. Most of his dialogue was recorded separately from the main production. The angels gathered around a speakerphone on set. Forsythe supplied Charlie later from a recording booth. That physical distance helped the illusion. Charlie did not feel like an ordinary supervisor sitting behind another office door. He seemed to be calling from a larger world of yachts, private clubs, and unexplained travel. The show occasionally teased a glimpse of him from behind or with his face concealed. It never needed to reveal more. John Forsythe became one of television's most recognizable men by giving audiences almost nothing to look at. Number 13. The original trio was built on contrast. The first three angels did not succeed because they seemed identical. They worked because each woman brought a different energy to the same assignment. Kate Jackson was the most experienced television actress of the trio. She had spent several seasons on The Rookies and understood the pace of an hour-long network drama. Jackson was initially connected with the role of Kelly Garrett, but she preferred Sabrina Duncan. Sabrina became the strategist. She often studied the room before moving, and her practical wardrobe helped separate her from the show's more obvious glamour. Farrah Fawcett brought speed and athletic confidence to Jill Monroe. Jill could race a car, enter a tennis club, or flirt with a suspect without making the shift feel forced. Her physical ease gave the action a playful energy. Jaclyn Smith entered with less acting experience. What producers saw during the testing process was not simply another beautiful face. Smith added warmth. Kelly Garrett could move through the show's elegant settings while remaining emotionally approachable. Together, Jackson, Fawcett, and Smith created a clear rhythm. Sabrina planned, Jill pushed forward, Kelly connected. The divisions were never absolute, but they gave viewers three distinct personalities to follow. On screen, the women looked less like three performers placed beside one another and more like three people who might have chosen each other even without Charlie's assignment. That impression would become increasingly valuable once the lineup began to change. Number 12. Farrah's poster became bigger than the series. Farrah Fawcett appeared as a regular angel for only one season. Her image helped define an entire decade. The famous red swimsuit poster was not created as Charlie's Angels merchandise. The Pro Arts Company commissioned photographer Bruce McBroom to make a pin-up image of Fawcett in 1976. The final photograph was strikingly simple. Farrah sat in a red one-piece swimsuit against a striped blanket. She selected the swimsuit and handled her own hair and makeup for the session. There was no detective badge, no gun, and no reference to Jill Monroe. Then Charlie's Angels reached television, and the poster and the series began amplifying each other. The show placed Fawcett in millions of homes. The poster placed her on bedroom walls, dorm room doors, and magazine racks across the country. More than 12 million copies were eventually sold. Her feathered hairstyle became a national fashion. Salons received requests for the Farrah look. Magazine editors knew her face could sell an issue, and she appeared on covers far beyond stories directly tied to the series. For Charlie's Angels, the attention was both priceless and destabilizing. Kate Jackson had entered as the experienced television star. Jaclyn Smith was building her own following. Yet Farrah was becoming something larger than Jill Monroe, larger than the weekly stories, and at times, larger than the three-woman ensemble. The show had helped create a sensation it could no longer control, and the series that produced that sensation had only recently been a pilot some ABC executives doubted would work at all. Number 11. The pilot broke through ABC's doubts. Three glamorous women solving crimes for a man they never saw did not sound like a safe network formula in 1976. ABC executives had serious doubts about the concept. The project appeared lightweight, and some questioned whether three female investigators could carry an hour-long action series. The pilot aired as a television movie on March 21, 1976. Its audience was enormous. ABC later put the pilot back on the schedule before the weekly launch. The repeat remained strong, making the idea harder for the network to dismiss. That response gave ABC the evidence it needed. The weekly series premiered on September 22nd with Kate Jackson, Farrah Fawcett, Jaclyn Smith, David Doyle, and John Forsythe's voice at the center of the format. Charlie's Angels finished its first full season near the top of the Nielsen rankings. In its second season, even after Farrah's departure, It remained among television's highest-rated programs. This was an era when three major networks shaped most evening viewing. A successful series did not merely find an audience, it entered the national routine. Charlie's Angels offered a bright combination of investigation, disguise, action, and fantasy. Against a decade marked by inflation, political distrust, and rapid cultural change, it provided dependable escapism without losing the satisfaction of watching the case get solved. The pilot proved that the women could carry the premise, but it also revealed how uncertain the network had been. Alongside the Angels, ABC had placed not one male liaison, but two. Only one would survive into the weekly series. Number 10. ABC added another male supervisor, then removed him. David Doyle was already John Bosley in the Charlie's Angels pilot. He was not the replacement for David Ogden Stiers. Stiers played a separate character named Scott Woodville, a formal Townsend associate who helped organize the assignment and served as another link between Charlie and the investigators. The pilot therefore included both men. Bosley was present, while Woodville added another layer of male supervision around the three women. Woodville handled the operation with a more formal, procedural air. Bosley felt less like a commander and more like a participant in the caper. Accounts of the pilot's development indicate that ABC remained uncertain about allowing the Angels to carry the entire operation on their own. Whatever the exact mixture of network caution and production judgment, the final weekly format made a clear choice. Scott Woodville disappeared. Bosley remained. The change simplified the agency immediately. David Doyle became the physical connection between Charlie's distant voice and the women working the case. He could deliver information, arrange support, join an undercover plan, or supply comic relief without taking over the investigation. Doyle understood the balance. Bosley might worry about an Angel's plan, but he did not need to prove that he was the smartest person in the room. He could be useful without becoming the hero who solved everything for them. Removing Woodville also made the premise cleaner. Charlie gave the assignment. Bosley supported the operation. The Angels drove the story. A network safeguard had vanished, and the series became stronger once it trusted its central idea. Number 9. The disguises became the show's weekly story engine. Charlie's Angels was presented as a detective series, but the weekly plots rarely depended on long office scenes or complicated forensic work. The Angels solved cases by entering worlds where ordinary investigators would be noticed immediately. One week, they might enter a beauty pageant. The next, they could pose inside a prison, a health spa, a nightclub, a cruise ship, a roller derby, or a wealthy family's estate. Disguise became the repeatable production solution. It also created a demanding wardrobe system. Costume designer Nolan Miller later described dressing the women according to both the undercover assignment and the personalities viewers already recognized. The cover could change, but Sabrina, Kelly, Jill, or Chris still had to remain visible beneath it. Jackson's clothes often leaned practical. Smith carried polished elegance. Fawcett's wardrobe supported Jill's athletic quality. Cheryl Ladd's costumes helped give Chris a younger, lighter energy. Each episode could therefore offer a fresh location and a new visual identity without rebuilding the entire series from the ground up. The formula was efficient, but it created pressure. A case set at a resort, pageant, or pool could quickly become an excuse for another revealing costume. Leonard Goldberg later recalled complaints from the actresses and repeated discussions with standards and practices over wardrobe. The disguises kept the series visually alive. They also fed the criticism that would follow Charlie's Angels for the rest of its run. Number 8. The Jiggle TV label never told the whole story. Critics quickly found a phrase for Charlie's Angels. They called it Jiggle television. The label reduced the series to swimsuits, tight clothing, and the physical appeal of its stars. Promotional photographs emphasized beauty. The camera often admired the angels, and ABC understood the commercial value of doing so. The criticism was not invented. Charlie's Angels was produced by men, sold through Glamour, and regularly placed its actresses in costumes designed to attract attention. Yet the label also left out half of what appeared on the screen. Even the opening narration recalled the menial police assignments the women had left behind. Charlie's agency gave them the cases their earlier jobs had denied them. The angels were not waiting for a man to rescue them. They drove the cars, entered the dangerous rooms, questioned suspects, built the plan, fought attackers, and protected one another. 3 women carried an hour-long action drama at a time when primetime crime television remained overwhelmingly male. The series did not offer a perfect feminist statement. Charlie was still the unseen male authority. The network still promoted the women as sex symbols. Some assignments clearly stretched credibility to place them in another glamorous setting. But commercial sexualization and professional independence existed in the same program. That contradiction is part of the show's history, not a problem that can be solved by choosing only one side. Charlie's Angels could be shaped by the limitations of its era while expanding what women were permitted to do at the center of network television. Viewers saw 3 women working, deciding, risking, and succeeding together every week. The fantasy looked carefree. Producing it was anything but. Number 7. The fantasy was built by an exhausting production machine. On television, the angels moved from the office to a mansion, a racetrack, or a beach without breaking stride. Behind the camera, an hour-long weekly drama required constant movement. The actresses rehearsed scenes, filmed on location, returned for close-ups, learned action, and changed wardrobe repeatedly. A single episode could require several undercover identities, each with its own clothes, hair, props, and set. Jaclyn Smith later described the compressed rhythm of a Charlie's Angels production week. The schedule became tight enough that forced calls were part of the working vocabulary. A late finish could be followed by another early return because the next episode was already pressing forward. Success added another shift after filming. The women were expected at publicity sessions, magazine interviews, network appearances, wardrobe fittings, and promotional events. Smith recalled that publicity calls were treated as obligations, not casual invitations. The series also limited outside opportunities. A performer attached to a hit network show had security, but the production owned most of her working calendar. Scripts arrived quickly. Locations changed. The undercover formula demanded a new surface every week, even when the machinery underneath remained the same. Audiences saw 3 women living inside a polished fantasy. The performers experienced a schedule with little room to disappear, rest, or decide what came next. That pressure did not explain every decision made by the cast. It did explain why success could begin to feel like confinement. Farrah Fawcett reached that point first, at the moment the show seemed least capable of losing her. Number 6. Farrah walked away after 1 season. Farrah Fawcett did not leave a failing television series. She left one of the biggest shows in America. Her decision after the first season shocked viewers and created an immediate crisis for Spelling Goldberg Productions and ABC. Accounts of her departure point to several pressures. Fawcett wanted the chance to pursue more demanding roles. She had grown frustrated with the material and with the restrictions of weekly production. There were also disputes surrounding the use and merchandising of her image. The red swimsuit poster had shown how valuable that image had become. Charlie's Angels merchandise pushed it even further, placing the cast on dolls, cards, games, school supplies, and other licensed products. Walking away, however, meant confronting the contract behind the fantasy. Spelling Goldberg filed a multi-million-dollar breach of contract lawsuit. The dispute continued into 1978 before ending in an out-of-court settlement. Under that agreement, Fawcett returned for 6 guest appearances during the 3rd and 4th seasons. Those appearances turned Jill into a returning figure rather than pretending she had never belonged to the agency. Those episodes created an unusual arrangement. Jill Monroe had left Townsend Investigations, but the series continued to treat her as part of its family. Farrah could return beside Kate Jackson, Jaclyn Smith, and Cheryl Ladd, the actress who had accepted her place in the permanent trio. The legal settlement preserved a bridge to the show's first season. It did not restore the original balance. Farrah's departure established a rule Charlie's Angels would test again and again. The format could survive a cast change, but the ensemble could not change without consequences. The producers now needed someone willing to enter the most closely watched vacancy on American television. Number 5. Cheryl Ladd saved the show by refusing to become Farrah. Cheryl Ladd understood that replacing Farrah Fawcett could become a career trap. When Aaron Spelling first approached her, Ladd declined. She knew viewers would compare every expression, hairstyle, and costume with the woman who had just become a national sensation. Spelling searched elsewhere, then returned. During their next conversation, Ladd asked the question that unlocked the character. What would she actually play? She did not want to become another Jill Monroe. The solution was to make Chris Monroe Jill's younger sister. That connection acknowledged the departure instead of pretending nothing had happened. Ladd also suggested that Chris should be a rookie. A less experienced Angel could make mistakes, ask questions, and bring more humor into the group. Sabrina and Kelly could guide her without the series treating her as weak. On her first day, Ladd wore a shirt identifying herself as Farrah Fawcett Minor. The joke faced the comparison directly and helped release some of the tension surrounding her arrival. Chris developed a lighter, more openly playful personality. Audiences accepted her, and Ladd remained through the final season. Over time, she gained enough standing to challenge the production. At the 2026 anniversary panel, Ladd recalled becoming tired of repeated bikini scenes. She answered by wearing a swimsuit so tiny that she expected ABC's censors to reject it. They did, and the point reached Aaron Spelling. Ladd's success came from understanding that continuity did not require imitation. Charlie's Angels survived its first major reinvention because the new Angel was allowed to be new. Number 4. The show cost Kate Jackson an Oscar-winning opportunity. Kate Jackson had helped shape Charlie's Angels before the weekly series began. She had objected to the Alley Cats, helped create the final title, selected Sabrina Duncan, and given the original trio much of its strategic center. By the third season, she was increasingly frustrated with the show's direction and with the demands of its schedule. Then she was offered the role of Joanna Kramer in Kramer vs. Kramer. The part was difficult, adult, and emotionally complex. It offered exactly the kind of feature film opportunity Jackson wanted while Charlie's Angels was still consuming most of her working year. The film's schedule moved more than once in an effort to accommodate her. In the end, the Charlie's Angels production would not rearrange enough time for Jackson to do both. She had to let the role go. Meryl Streep was later cast as Joanna Kramer. Her performance won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. That does not mean Jackson was guaranteed an Oscar. It means the role Charlie's Angels kept her from accepting became an Oscar-winning opportunity for someone else. The consequence was painfully direct. The series had made Jackson internationally famous. The same series blocked a project that might have opened a different chapter of her career. She left after 3 seasons. Charlie's Angels had already survived Farrah's departure. Losing Jackson created another problem. Sabrina was not merely a familiar face. She was the angel most closely associated with planning, restraint, and control. When Sabrina left Townsend Investigations, the show had to replace a function as well as a performer. Number 3. The later cast changes revealed what could not be replaced. Shelley Hack joined the 4th season as Tiffany Wells. Tiffany was designed to bring a different quality to the team. She was polished, educated, and connected to a more formal East Coast background. The producers were not simply copying Sabrina, but the comparison was unavoidable. Viewers had spent 3 seasons learning the rhythm among Sabrina, Kelly, and first Jill, then Chris. Hack entered after that rhythm had already been disrupted twice. She remained for 1 season. Her arrival changed the visual and conversational balance again. Kelly and Chris had to establish a new rhythm while viewers were still measuring the absence of Sabrina. Tanya Roberts joined the 5th season as Julie Rogers. Julie brought a more streetwise, physically adventurous energy. Once again, the series tried to refresh the trio rather than reproduce the past exactly. Neither actress created the larger problem. By then, the original novelty had faded. The program moved through different time slots. The undercover structure was familiar, and each new lineup asked viewers to relearn how the team worked. Leonard Goldberg later acknowledged that the repeated cast changes weakened the series. Television ensembles depend on small habits. Audiences learn who notices the clue, who challenges the suspect, who breaks the tension, and who takes the first risk. When the lineup changes, those expectations have to be built again. By the 5th season, the speakerphone, Bosley, the silhouettes, and the basic formula were still recognizable. The internal rhythm was no longer automatic. One original angel, however, had remained through every version of the team. Number 2. Jaclyn Smith became the show's last link to the beginning. Jaclyn Smith entered Charlie's Angels with the least acting experience of the original trio. She became the only original angel to remain through all 5 seasons. As Kelly Garrett, Smith brought emotional continuity while almost everything around her changed. Kelly could move through the series' glamorous settings without seeming distant. Her warmth made her especially effective with frightened witnesses, vulnerable clients, and people the investigation required her to trust. After Jill left, Kelly helped connect Chris to the original team. After Sabrina left, Kelly carried the memory of both founding angels into the later lineups. Smith worked alongside Farrah Fawcett, Kate Jackson, Cheryl Ladd, Shelley Hack, and Tanya Roberts. The final episode placed that continuity at the center of the story. Titled, "Let Our Angel Live," it used Kelly's crisis to turn the finale into a memory of the series itself. Kelly was shot during a stakeout and taken to the hospital. Bosley, Chris, and Julie waited for news as the episode moved through memories of earlier cases. Charlie came to the hospital as well, although the series still concealed his face. Kelly believed she heard his voice while drifting in and out of consciousness. The farewell did not build toward a giant final villain or an explosive last assignment. It gathered the surviving team around one injured angel. After 5 seasons, Kelly had become the link between every version of Charlie's Angels. The ending recognized that history without needing to explain it. 50 years later, 3 women representing different stages of that history would stand together again. Number 1. 50 years later, the angels still chose one another. On April 6, 2026, Kate Jackson, Jaclyn Smith, and Cheryl Ladd stepped onto the same stage at the Dolby Theater in Hollywood. Paley Fest had brought them together to mark 50 years of Charlie's Angels. Each woman represented a different turning point in the series. Jackson came from the founding trio and had helped shape the property before it had a final name. Smith had remained through every season and every major lineup. Ladd had entered during the show's first crisis and proved that an angel could be replaced without becoming an imitation. The event did not erase the departures, contract battles, schedule conflicts, or later cast changes. It placed those chapters beside the connection that had survived them. On stage, the women spoke about the show's cultural meaning and about their relationship beyond the production. Smith described the original premise as 3 women chasing danger instead of being rescued from it. Ladd remembered that the actresses were strongly individual, but cared for one another. Jackson later described their connection in plain language. It is a real love. It doesn't go away. Those statements mattered because the reunion made them visible. Charlie's Angels had often been packaged through competition. Magazines compared the women. publicity ranked their beauty. Cast changes encouraged audiences to choose favorites and decide who could replace whom. The women on stage presented a different version of that history. Jackson had belonged to the original lineup. Ladd had joined after Farrah Fawcett left. Smith had worked through both eras and everything that followed. They were not three actresses from one frozen moment. They represented the show's creation, its first reinvention, and its entire 5-season journey. That is why the reunion provided a more specific answer to the series' longevity than another general tribute could. The Glamour drew the first look. The cases supplied the weekly structure. Charlie's voice and Bosley's presence made the fantasy familiar. But the emotional center was the sight of women working as a team rather than being written as rivals. 50 years after Charlie first called, the women were still answering for one another. Charlie's Angels was glamorous, commercially calculated, and sometimes deeply imperfect. It also kept 3 women at the center of the action through 5 seasons, 115 episodes, and several difficult reinventions. The lineup changed. The television landscape changed. The people who first watched the show grew older. Yet the silhouettes, the speakerphone, and the sense of 3 familiar women entering danger together remained instantly recognizable. When you hear the words, "Good morning, angels," whose face appears first in your memory? Some television shows end when their final episode fades to black. Others remain in the room, waiting quietly beside the speakerphone.